welcome to the ADNA Presents. My name is Colleen Connor. I am the founder and current director of Audio Description Training Retreats, where I train and coach audio description writers and editors and voice artists, kind of all aspects of description. And I also do a lot of quality control and some voicing myself. And this episode is a very special feature, which is the man who makes all this possible. Famous voice artist, as well as audio description, sort of voice expert, and I would say excellent blind and low vision ally. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and gals, humans and aliens, Roy Samuelson.
That was amazing. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. The thing is, you're so awesome that I know it's like very hard to, I guess I should have asked you, like, what is the exact way you want me to, like, what is your title and all that jazz?
Oh, we can totally gush on each other. I consider myself a consultant. I use this thing like a catalyst for quality and excellence in audio description, including blind professionals in every aspect of audio description, and to be in parity to sighted audiences. Like, that's my gig. That's everything that I'm involved in kind of hinges on those things.
Yeah. Besides being a fellow gay and a fellow queer to myself, we met, it seems like 100 years ago.
Was it a gay retreat or was it an audio description retreat?
What was really funny is that I think it was a consulting type of thing where you asked me to consult for some of your voice artists who were practicing. And then we just started to chat and then it was like, oh, sorry, I've known you for 100 years. How are you?
Exactly. That's what it feels like.
So I will ADNA the situation. What do you love about audio description, Roy?
I think the two things that I love about audio description is how it models inclusion for disabled professionals in so many aspects. That's one aspect. It just being able to use audio description as a microcosm of what disability representation means is really powerful to me, and being able to kind of laser focus on that aspect and how it can spill over to other areas. That's pretty cool. And the other thing that I love about audio description is its professional, like the actual work of the voice talent in audio description. I love all aspects of audio description. You particularly focus on the writing and making sure that happens on the AD training retreats. And I love that you're including the engineering, the placement, the timing, the how loud or soft it is, the engineering side of it, as well as the voice talent. You cover all that in the AD training retreats. One of the things that I'm really excited about on the voice talent side is how that nuance, that what I call a high wire act of the performance, makes such a difference to make sure that our audiences are as immersed as sighted audiences are, that there's that parity of experience, that we can all experience this and be immersed in the story without being distracted by the voice. And that just excites me. That is a very simple thing, just saying in parity to sighted audiences, but to make sure that the voice talent does that in a way that is so crafted and so skilled, it's really exciting to see. And that's been driven by blind professionals as well.
Yeah, I was extremely impressed by you as soon as I met you and listening to this podcast and going, oh, okay, this guy is an ally and making a difference. And it's not about like, I just love serving the blind and the poor people. I love that I can help them just be a part of a movie experience. And I was like, oh wait, he's talking about like quality and excellence and like, hey, let me support other blind professionals to do this and let me be inclusive of other people and let me do a podcast from all aspects of description, because a lot of people still have no idea what this is. And so I think that's amazing about the way you approach description from a professional standpoint and a craft. I think a lot of people might take this as like a job or like a section of their portfolio or something. And you could approach it like regular commercial work or, but it is a totally different animal. I love that you approach it as equal, if not more focused than other projects. How did you get into audio description?
Thanks. Yeah, I really think it hinges on the voiceover experience. Like all the work that I've done in voiceover prior to my introduction to audio description has fed into audio description, even though it's a very specific genre, as you have said. So it's like there's something really special about that foundation, thanks to the coaches that I've had, the training, the workouts, I was doing script readings every week for like 10 years, reading 100 pages of scripts cold for like writers of produced TV shows and movies. And that has fed into the skill set of audio description. So specifically to answer your question, there was an opportunity where I had to audition for audio description. And at the time it went under some different names. Colleen, I kind of don't even want to say them. I don't even want to put those other words out because it's like we finally agreed. There's one thing that we can finally agree on. Everyone calls it audio description now. So,
yep. Even if it's unfortunate that it starts with audio. So people sometimes immediately go towards like closed captioning or hard of hearing, but audio description's the name that was first coined, and it's the name we're going with. And yeah.
It's not the best, but we're agreed on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, here's where we're at. Okay, so it's AD. There's like, we fought this for so long and we finally agreed. Can we please move on?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the introduction to AD was an audition. And Colleen, I was intimidated. It was time codes. It was audio cues. There were some visuals on the screen. Audio description doesn't need every single one of those aspects. I just am sharing this particular audition experience, and every company is going to have their own approach. But this experience was fascinating because it's like, okay, I cannot be thinking right now. I have to get into the flow. I have to be able to use all the things that this script is giving me and the audio cues. And if I have visuals, what those are giving, and to be able to deliver this in a way that really makes sense to make sure that the audience gets it. So that was all part of the voiceover side. When I'm really excited about an audition, I usually get like, oh, I hope I book it. In this case, there was that element, but more importantly was this discovery, the curiosity of, oh my God, this type of voiceover is so incredible. There are so many aspects, like back to the professional side of it, like how this gets done, who the audience is, how this works, what's the delivery type, and like exploring that just got me so tickled and excited.
Yeah. You are the type of passionate person where I think you can hear it when you talk about something. I feel like I'm that way too. Sometimes people in my class are like, you can tell you're so jazzed about description. And it's like, we just can't help but be like, yes, yes, yes. But I think if it's going to be quality, it's like anything else. You have to care, and you have to care about how it comes out. I know that right now, one of the challenges I'm seeing in the industry is that deadlines are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And the pay is still all over the place, but also I don't think it's as much as people, writers, editors, mixers, or voicers, or somebody that does all. I don't think it's enough. And also due to the fact that audio description is still almost this afterthought of like, we're going to check the box, we got to get it done, or some producers don't even know that their company does it and has to have it. So what are some of the like challenges or things that you see in the industry that you think are not going so great?
I think one of the biggest focuses is not directed at any company. It's not directed at any individual. It's just the nature of the system right now. And I think you nailed it with the afterthought that check the box mentality comes from the approach of how cheap can we make this? That if you focus on, look how cheap we can make this, then of course the rates are going to go down. Of course, deadlines are going to be cut and like roles eliminated. You know, the idea of automation, there is a place for automation. However, in this particular instance, like we were saying about the craft and the art, that's not just on the voice side, that's on the writing side, that's on the engineering side, the timing of the editing, the editor of the actual script itself, the quality control. Each of these elements and more really affect the experience of the audience. And if we're focused on how cheap we can make it, I use the example of, can you imagine Marvel coming out with 10 new feature films in the next 5 years, but they're like, we can only afford to do 6 of them. So 4 of them, we're just going to kind of storyboard. They're going to be hand drawn, and we're going to just talk through what's going to happen because we're so excited to share the story with you, but we can't really afford to do it. Like Marvel fans would lose their minds.
Yeah.
And we're asking our audiences to do that. that doesn't jive. But let's look at the system, like the way the system is set up. In most cases, there are many exceptions, but in most cases, it's the distributors that are handling adding audio description. Again, it is that afterthought. And some of the producers that I know that work on TV shows that I've done the audio description narration for, they had no clue that I voiced their series for, and it's like, we know each other, and it's like there was that disconnect. So my argument would be that if we can get production to understand this work, to value it, it would not only be included in the post-production side of things, so that when it gets sent to distribution, it would be sent along with the audio description. So no matter where it goes, whatever streaming service, whatever place you live, it can go. Apple TV Plus does this exquisitely. All their stuff, you can be anywhere in the world and it just works. You can turn on multiple languages of audio description or dubbing. There's like so many choices and it's already built into the system. So there's no excuse that this can't be done, but it is a change because right now there's a lot of the people that hire the companies that hire me are usually the distributors. And you can imagine if you've got 200 projects to deliver in the next month, 200 projects. And if we save a buck here or a buck there, multiply that buck or two by 200, that's really going to save a lot of money. But if it's included in the budget ahead of time, if it's in the budget, then all of a sudden the audio description is included in the work that's being done in the post sound house. I used to work for a post sound company where there were editors and mixers who would spend hours with the director, multiple mixers in basically a movie studio, and spend the time to really make sure that the sound was just what it needed to be. And those people win Academy Awards. That's the kind of respect that these sound systems were given. And I think even with the pandemic, doing things remotely, it's still possible to have that kind of respect.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about accessibility in general is that growing up and going to school in like the time period that I did, I'm in my 30s. So I've seen us go from like the floppy disks to like my phone. And so there are a lot of developments with technology, but it seems like accessibility is always like about 6 months behind or like 2 updates behind. Like it's always something. And we're starting to be hired and included as people who actually use assistive technology are hired by the companies who are developing it. But similar with audio description, if you hand me something that's done and you say, hey, can you listen to this audio description and just give us some feedback? And then I do quality control and I give them feedback and they're like, wait, you like gave us a lot of feedback and like suggestions. And then you wrote in here like stuff for the voice artist and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, if I'm doing quality control, I assume you're going to re-record this. Like, hello. And so if you do things retroactively, it is so difficult and it happens the most with accessibility and especially with description. I think people just, you have this finished product and then it's like, oh, right before it goes out, put the AD on there. And it's like, what? Now there's no time to have that couple people do quality control. And especially with one of the things you and I've talked about before is the idea that when you're blind or low vision or losing your vision, one of the things you start to rely on heavily is your hearing. And certainly there are people who have both hearing loss and sight loss, but in general, blind people can hear real well. And so when the mix isn't good and the audio description is too loud and the movie becomes really soft, or when there's a couple lines that are accidentally repeated because somebody didn't remove them in editing, or when there's a couple lines that are accidentally repeated because somebody didn't remove them in editing, or when there's a couple lines that are accidentally repeated because somebody didn't remove them in editing, or when stuff steps on the dialogue, or when somebody feels the need to fill every single silence with description, or the description just doesn't help. And the last aspect of that is like bad voicing of description. I was curious as to what you would like to see audio description become as we move forward. And I think obviously one of them is the idea of not having it be post production. But like, what else would you like to see?
Thank you for that. It's a really perceptive question because I think personally, I'm in the position of voice talent. I don't do the writing. I don't edit the writing. I don't do the mix. Sometimes I place, but that's another job for an engineer. I don't do cast. Well, I have done casting, but in most cases, I don't. There are all these other roles. And I think respecting the roles, ROLES, makes a world of difference. Let's go back to what we talked about with the microcosm of AD and how it can apply more globally to accessibility. There are
Mhm.
so many changes happening right now with culture and technology, and it can go, it's chaos, you know, like that Wild West factor of it. It can go in so many different ways. And so I think about taking advantage of it. We introduced the ADNA initially as a credit list for voice talents because that was something that people could understand. If we jumped in right away to say, hey, audiences, there's this mixer. And what they do is, and it's like mixer, it's like something in the kitchen. It's like, well, kind of, but for your ears. And it's like,
Buttered rolls.
there you go. So it's like, let's start with something that we all understand. Okay, a voice person reads into a microphone. Great. We can get that. Let's get people introduced to it. And then the strategy was let's include writers. So what does a writer do? Now let's include sound engineers. And sound engineers have different parts. Let's simplify it. And in the keynote speech, we talked about this, that what they do is, you know, if you have to keep fiddling with your volume when you're listening to an audio description track while you're watching a movie or a series, that means that the mix is wrong. Like, let's make it attainable. Like when it's done right, you don't have to flip with the volume. And it doesn't sound like everything is just ducking down so that you can hear stuff. Like it's just, it flows. And there's a way to do that. If you're laughing at a different time than someone else that's listening to audio description, that means that the audio description wasn't done. So like if a sighted person is watching and someone else is watching with audio description and they're not in sync and they're not crying at the same time or their jump scares are off, that's a editing issue. And those are the two aspects of engineering. So like, let's go back to your question, respecting the roles. I've been put in positions before where I'm just the voice talent and I do my best to advocate to make sure that blind professionals are included in every aspect. I can't do that all the time. I'm doing my best. But
Yeah.
at some points, it's like, this is what I do. There are some times where I read a script. I didn't write the script and it's terrible or it's wall to wall or there's something else. And I do my best to be able to speak up and say, do we need to say he knocks on the door? Because I think the audience is going to recognize the sound of that. And it's just like, that might not be the best approach. That might not work for some companies. Sometimes it does. But there's been a lot of work that it reflects on me. And so by respecting the different roles, I mean, selfishly, it gets me off the hook because it's like, I didn't do that. But it's also, it gives some responsibility to the writers to up their game. It gives responsibilities to the engineers to up their game. The casting decisions to up, make sure that we've got the right casting. And of course, the quality control, you understand that. It's like, why did I pronounce this word in this episode, but in this other episode, I pronounced it differently? It's like, that's on me. And then it's also on somebody else to make sure that that's caught. It's a collaborative effort. And the weakest link in any of these roles gets screwed. So bringing it back to your question, I swear, it's like, one of the things that would really mean a lot is respecting the roles and knowing what these roles are and those roles getting credited. Because when that happens, there's a sense of responsibility and accountability that will help pivot away from this, how cheap can we make it, check the box, to, hey, wait, there's a lot of people involved here and they all need to work together. What's going on here? Let's hold everybody accountable.
Yeah. I always say often it's an art and a science. And what I mean by that is what you just mentioned, which is, it is technical and creative. Those are other aspects. And again, if one part of the machine doesn't work, it can't spit out the good quality stuff. And so it makes such a difference when good audio description is real, when something's done really well. I know one of the things that you've advocated for and has gone really well is starting to get audio description for awards shows and to literally get awards. And I think that's sort of one of those like artistic, I don't know, I guess Hollywood ways, at least for pre-recorded media, for people to get awards for their work. And if you had audio description, mixing and editing, audio description, writing, audio description, voicing. And, those were categories of awards. And you could certainly have captioning. You could have different elements that they put to make things accessible. But it's not just like verbatim translating something. It's audio description is you are creating a visual translation of like vivid poetry to kind of fit in between sounds and dialogue to really help a piece stand out. And the best compliment you can get from someone who's a patron of audio description is, oh my God, I completely forgot that there was description. Yes, it was very good because I completely forgot it was there. And when one aspect is off, it's very easy to pick on. And I think people are now starting to speak up a little bit, but really it is important for those of us who use audio description. Do get on social media, use the internet. We're coming for them. Tweet and things, give feedback, because otherwise things just get put out and companies go, look at all this stuff we've described. And it's like, yeah, but how much better could that have been? And I think there are this recognition of, especially in pre-recorded media, what are all the roles that description has? And description can be so many things, and it can be added to almost any aspect of life. I love the things that you've done to help people who are blind and low vision or people with disabilities to get recognized in the field. In the past couple of years, certainly the pandemic, I think, has kind of upped the ante of some people realizing, oh, people can work from home. What? So I would love to know also, as you normally ask, is like in your dream world, let's say everything's great. In the dream world.
Shall we? Let's say that. These are the words we're going to use.
Can I put that into the universe?
Sure. Okay. Let's go with this there. Hypothetical here.
Everything was great.
Love the quiver.
What would you like audio description to do or to go in direction of?
Sure. So I'm going to specifically talk about feature films and series, whether it's TV or streaming, that is my main focus. There are some incredible talents that do live stuff. I've done live audio description as an announcer, and it's very rewarding, and it's a really special skill set. And those that nail that, it's great. I find that in TV and film, there's a lot more opportunities. As you had said, with the remote recording, it just is so much more, it makes sense. Pre-pandemic, I feel like the pump was primed with a lot of the things that we've talked about. This podcast has over 150 episodes of audio description quality and excellence. You've been in several of them. This is part of the deal. It's like, if we're going to focus on quality and excellence, that's one thing to do. So it's a podcast. I'm a white male in America, so of course I have to have a podcast. It just made sense. The other thing was right? So the other thing was the ADNA database, and that's like the Internet Movie Database of audio description. So again, started with voice talents and we added some more. Being able to get to the point where something like that is just a part of the IMDb itself.
Yeah. I was going to say it's the IMDb of AD.
Right. So it's like, I respect that there are reasons for the separation. I get it. We have to get up there. We have to ramp up, so to speak, to get to the point where this can happen. And there's a lot of different organizations that are respecting this work. 4 years ago, I submitted myself for an audio description track under the narration category for a voiceover arts awards called SOVAS. And I was honored to be nominated. And that was, I believe, the first time that an audio description narrator got something for the narration category. And it took a few years and a ton of conversations behind the scenes, but we got to the point where there's now 3 categories for the SOVAS Awards for audio description. And that is not specifically for blind and low vision people. It is for voice talents. That feels like a different kind of win. I am not negating the other wins that are happening. It's a different kind of win, and it's kind of win that I like to focus on. The other thing was I'm still a member of the Television Academy, but I was on the executive committee for the Performers Peer Group. It's a fancy title, but basically all the performers that vote for the Primetime Emmys have a governor's group are represented by talents. And it took 10 years to be able to get this, but we now have the ability for audio description narrators to use their TV credits, even on streaming services, to be able to qualify to join the Television Academy, to be able to vote for the Primetime Emmys. You can see where this is headed. The joy of that is not, hey, look, I get to vote for the Emmys. I was already a member. But what it means is that this is the kind of inclusion that's happening. As more blind professionals do this work, this is now yet another way for performers to be able to get into the Television Academy, specifically performers who are disabled, and be able to get there, to be able to make those influential decisions. And obviously there's going to be, well, we got narrators. So what about writers? Are writers going to be included for their audio description contributions to TV? What about the Motion Picture Academy? These are the things that it feels like we're starting things. I love starting the sparks. I love paving the way for this kind of stuff. And I think that when we look at that from the entertainment perspective, it's going to build the awareness. We had Audio Description Awareness Day for almost 3 years in a row. We took a little pause this year, but that was the goal. It wasn't to celebrate audio description for people who already celebrate it. It was to outreach, to make sure that those who maybe have a TV show that has audio description to find out, wait, what? Somebody wrote a whole script based on my visuals and I don't even know about it.
Yeah.
I want to know about that. And in the context of still hiring the same companies, there's no reason for a production company to say, I can write audio description. No, just hire the team that does it and include them in the process so that, if there's something that is going to be coming 3 seasons down the road and it's some trinket that happens in episode 2, season 1, you got to make sure that that's noted. It's like, that's the kind of connection that makes sense. I can talk for hours.
I know you and I could just solve the world's problems one sentence at a time. But yeah, I would love to see it more mainstream as well. I would love to see diversity and inclusion not be these 2 words that are like buzzwords for every business right now. Not that I'm complaining about being more
I hear that, yeah,
recognized and starting to, shockingly get paid for things, but certainly being recognized for what you're good at and what you can contribute and being part of both society and culture, and all of that ties into audio description. And if you don't think blind people are fans of stuff, you better back up, because
hey, can we go back to one more thing, Colleen?
Oh yes,
I'm thinking about this whole cheap thing. You had briefly addressed the money situation. If we're advocating for inclusion and diversity, if you're talking about this in the context, we got to get to the audience, of course, but let's still keep focused on the audio description professionals who are disabled, blind, low vision, et cetera. That the way that it's perceived, it's like, oh, here's a person that we can hire who's disabled. It comes kind of across as a little bit of tokenism, that thing that you had said earlier about the service mentality, that if we can focus on the peer-to-peer relationship, the colleague relationship, that I am providing a service that you need as a disabled performer, that deserves to be compensated, and that deserves to be fairly compensated. And if these rates, these standards of rates are going down and down and down, it's not right for blind and low vision professionals who do this work to be treated like it's just, well, this is what we pay and it's not that great. It deserves to be high because of their contribution, because of the skill set, like you had said, that goes into it. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I wanted to bring that up in the context of, of course, everybody wants to get paid more, but in this sense, there is value. There is a contribution of what that voice talent brings to the work, that when an audience experiences an audio description track that is so immersive that they can focus on the emotional experience that they're having and not that the voice talent is having, I think we're getting somewhere.
The other thing that's interesting about money as well is that audio description comes from a background of service. A lot of people who first started it and first started training, they asked for volunteers. And the staff that was often approached in television studios and stuff was like the dubbing or the captioning department. They just went, oh, you do deaf stuff? Here, do blind stuff too. I don't know. They started doing audio description, all these other names. Yeah, do that too. I don't know, just do it. And so it was this included in the caption fee, or it was this volunteer. And what I find extremely interesting, and what I always tell anyone who wants to go into this is ask for what you're worth. When you get paid, somebody treats the profession differently. All of a sudden, it becomes a profession. This becomes a craft and a listen. I went to school, I trained, I practiced. I'm bringing my skill set and my expertise to you. You need to pay me for that. And I think that sometimes the inclination with something like audio description is well, I really just want to work and please and I'll do a bunch of stuff for free, and if you don't like it, then you don't have to have it. But if you like my stuff, kind of like a demo, if you like my stuff, then maybe you could hire me for a project. I feel like when you have to approach something from this supplication standpoint, it's like, no, it's sort of what you mentioned with not necessarily equality all the way, because I'm never going to have the exact same experience as a sighted person,
Mhm.
but it's meeting somebody on their level. It's meeting each person as a new human being. I myself am blind, but I can't speak for all blind people. Audio description has standards and kind of a way to rules to follow, but it's not a hard and fast, that's the right answer. There's a creative process to it, there's an interpretive process to it. For the voice artist, certainly it matters what intention you bring to each line. And so when meet someone at that level and make sure you're ready as well. If you want to do audio description, I think we are getting past the days, or I hope that we are moving towards, as you mentioned, quality and excellence. We're moving towards, hey, this is a specialty and this is part of what I do. And I think that is heartening in a way. And money's money. I don't know how to solve capitalism and the economy. I don't know how to solve that. We do have to have money to live, and blah, blah, who knows what to ask for what rate when, and what to throw out and when not to mention anything. Like it's challenging, but I think don't go at something with this like I'm gonna bid the lowest, aka do it for free or something, just so I can get the job and then not have enough resources to do it, or not. I don't know. Does that make sense?
And I think one of the things that's fascinating about that is that there are so many different sides to it in the sense of it is so isolating, this work, not only because of the pandemic, but because each company has their own approach and each company has their own way of creating the audio description, that there still is there's a lack of transparency. And
Yeah, yeah.
I, some of it may be deliberate, most of it is not, some of it might be, but that makes it even harder. And you can imagine that if somebody has the good intentions of saying, on the professional side, I want more credits. And hey, look, I get to work on this TV show. I'll do it for as little as I can because I want the credit. I want the credit. I want that. I want to build up that reputation and association. I can understand where that comes from. And
Yeah.
like you had said earlier, there's also this, oh, I've been voicing other things that I could really care less about. It's just for a paycheck. This feels like something that, back to that feeling that you had addressed earlier. There's that sense of, oh, I'm doing good. And I think that can unintentionally, I don't think it's deliberate, become a trap. And in the sense of what you're talking about with worth, I think there's a few voice talents that I talk with about what worth is. And it's been really great to have mentors. I consider yourself a mentor. Like I've turned to you a bunch of times offline and I'm like, what do I do with this? How do I, Colleen, help. And
It's fine. That goes both ways.
right, great. So, but like nobody's alone, and knowing that you're not alone. This has been a struggle most of my life, is fearing this isolation and like, how am I going to make this decision? I'm not alone, and like turning to those that you can trust and know that they've got your back and that they're going to protect you. And it's like there's some really challenging things that happen, and it happens really fast. And it's like being able to turn to someone and say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with, and be vulnerable enough and trustworthy enough that, it's a two-way street to make sure that the trust is legit, or, make sure everyone's looking out for each other and say, hey, listen, here's what I'm faced with. I don't feel like I'm being valued. This is something that, can you help me with the language? Can you help? And I think that when voice talents can come to that point and look at anyone in audio description, or I guess even anywhere, and say, like, here's something that I'm struggling with. I know I'm worth more than this, but this is what's been offered me. I really want this opportunity because XYZ. I want the credibility. I don't want to be trapped. Like, these are the kinds of conversations that make audio description so sloppy, messy, human, and weird. But I think by doing those conversations and by recognizing that there's been a lot of work that's been put into this audio description for the good of everyone involved, whether it's the audience, the companies that hire the talents of all kinds, or even the distributors or the filmmakers, that there's a lot of team members that really do have the best in mind, and they're doing their best, and respecting those others who have done that, and know that when you devalue yourself, that also affects others. And I'm susceptible to that too. It's a fascinating experience, learning, here's what I stand for, and here's why I'm going to do it. I really enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, listening to podcasts about audio description, certainly check out the ADNA, listen to this podcast, which is also now a Kindle book.
Oh, I'm so
Yes.
excited about that, Colleen. It's like we've got, I think, 12 some interviews of voice talent specifically on the Kindle books. So when those conversations are happening, some people prefer to read. And it's like, ironically, that, it's a synth reader, if
Yeah.
you turn on, I mean, the irony is not lost on me, but being able to have that, to be able to stop and listen to it again, or see something. When I was editing, oh gosh, it was fascinating to revisit these conversations in a different format, in text format, and to be able to kind of luxuriate in it and really reappreciate what these voice talents bring to this work. I included the keynote speech at the end of the book, and I had a lot of fun with character spacing and tabs and commas to really make sure that when the screen reader reads, it kind of flows in the way that I wanted. I manipulated it in a really specific way. So I really had a lot of fun with the Kindle book. But yeah, it's like the Kindle book has a lot of voice talent sharing what they did, and what a great model.
Networking is huge. This is an industry right now where people are having conversations. It's a good idea to get on LinkedIn or Facebook or social media and just get on the internet and start seeing what conversations are happening, who seems to know what's going on and who doesn't, what audio description you like and what you don't like. There are different ways to do things, and every single track is not going to please everybody. That's just the way it goes. But there's some great conversations that happen, and I love creating a safe space for conversations. I'm very excited about the direction that things are going in, and I hope it just continues to go in the direction of, okay, this is a profession. Let's get everybody trained up, or let's get high quality. Okay, if you're going to voice this, let's match the person to the project. If you're going to have an amazing Irish movie, get an Irish voice actor to do the audio description. It's casting correctly and really starting to add those touches, those fine touches that make something different and that make things stand out and give it that high standard and high quality that the majority of audiences get. So yeah.
I love it.
What else would you want to tell the audience about? Is there anything, as the host and creator of this amazing network, ADNA, and this podcast, ADNA Presents, is there anything else you want people to know?
I think one of the cool things is that in the podcast, I really love, and you've been doing this to me as the roles have reversed, to give space to be able to allow the person to share their thoughts. There's something really enjoyable about a podcast format that doesn't have the restraints of time, and it's really easy to access. I think going back to the social media, when I founded the audio description discussion group on Facebook with Kevin, that we found our goal and intention was to grow the lively conversations about quality and excellence, to get that focus going. Now, of course, there's going to be accessibility issues. There's going to be shows that travel from cinema to streaming, and then there's others that don't, or skip episodes within seasons, and those need to be talked about. I do not want to discount that. I know the importance of quantity and that it needs to be there. At the same time, I really am excited to see all the conversations happening about our audiences saying what they want and what they deserve. And people are paying attention. So that's really exciting to have that format on that particular social media and be able to see how that's started making influence in major productions. It's really exciting. And then finally, I think the biggest thing is that Kevin's Way is still a new measure of excellence for our previously marginalized content users. It is a distinction in the sense that imagine a good housekeeping seal of approval or a gold star, that it is a way to shift the focus away from how cheap things can be to how great they can be. And I've used that expression in the context of audio description, but it can apply to a lot of other areas. And this is one other thing that I still am working on and dedicated, along with the podcast, along with the social media, and along with all the other things. It's like all of these things are really about the involvement and the approach of audio description, not only as a narrator. I've done thousands of audio description titles, but what's important to me is being that catalyst for what quality and excellence in audio description means. And that's through included, it's definitely through inclusion of blind professionals.
I know Kevin was a blind friend of yours. Yes. He was a real,
Yes.
true, amazing person. So, the Nobel Prize or the Pulitzer Prize, Kevin's Way is the audio description prize. So it's like
Nice.
the little stamp that goes on something to say like, this has all the markers of solid audio description review and track, and this is the best we got for this piece. And thinking about blind professionals and what is useful for people to know, just the accessibility of audio description as well. So, it can be amazing. Audio description can be the greatest thing ever, but if we can't turn it on, how, like, how do we know? And so
Yeah.
it's thinking about the standard, but also how we make sure the awareness and the ease of access is there. And Kevin's Way to me is kind of that, like, oh, this one's the, got the Pulitzer Prize, like got the boop, got the Kevin's Way prize. I so admire you. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know how hard you work on this podcast. And I mean, you just mentioned, at least 5 of the things you do. And it's like all of us do 10 million things and work way too hard all the time. But this podcast has made a huge difference. It's a great resource for people. So yeah, just thank you for being you.
Thanks. Thanks for saying so, Colleen. And thanks for being you. It's a lot of the things that I think we both are focused on when it comes to quality and excellence is to make sure that this work is respected fully. And your AD training retreats are exemplary of that. And you taking over this year, particularly, and seeing the success that you're already seeing through all the other retreats that you've done through the years. And that ripple effect does make a difference. So right back at you.
Thanks. So yeah, everybody check out Kevin's Way. Check out, obviously, ADNA Presents podcasts, whether it's audio or Kindle. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm at adtrainingretreats@gmail.com. On Twitter, it's at ADRetreats, as in audio description retreats. And then Roy, where can people find and follow you?
Thanks. I'm on a unofficial break from some social media, just in the
Good.
current place.
Good for you.
Yeah.
All of us need, oh God.
But what I am on, it's twitter.com/Roy Samuelson, Instagram, Roy Samuelson, and roysamuelson.com. Facebook, I really think that audio description discussion is a great place. There's also the ADNA showcase where a lot of professionals who work in audio description can find other professionals or hire other professionals or look to hire. So that's kind of been an exciting advancement there. But it's exciting to see a lot of these things go in the direction that I'm really pleased with. And I know if Kevin was around, he'd still be thrilled with too.
Yes. So congratulations on all your success so far. And here's to us continuing to push the boulder up the mountain.
Sisypheanly yours. Thanks, Gully.
Thank you.